African woman has a shocking honeymoon with Arab executive who hides a dark secret. They called it a dream wedding. She called it her second chance at life. But when Malia, a resilient African woman from a small village in Senegal, marries a mysterious and powerful Arab executive named Zayed, she never imagines what awaits her on their secluded honeymoon island. Within days, the fairy tale turns into a whirlwind of questions, disappearances, and a discovery so terrifying it threatens everything she thought she knew about her husband and herself. What begins as a passionate love story between a woman saved from poverty and a man cloaked in luxury soon spirals into a dangerous emotional puzzle. Why does Zayed keep disappearing late at night? Why are there guards watching their honeymoon suite from afar? And why does he react so violently when she touches a locked suitcase in their villa? By the time Malia uncovers the truth, she is forced to make a devastating choice. Love a man whose secret identity could destroy nations, or save herself before it's too late. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and turn on notifications so you never miss another emotional and thrilling story like this one. What you're about to hear will leave you breathless and questioning how well we ever truly know someone. Malia had never seen water so blue. It shimmered like liquid sapphire under the afternoon sun as the yacht glided toward the private island. Her heart raced, not from fear, but from disbelief. Just a few weeks ago, she'd been walking barefoot across a dusty field in her village, wearing the same second-hand dress she had worn for 3 years. Now, she stood on the deck of a luxury vessel, wearing silk and diamonds, next to a man who could buy entire countries if he wished. Zayed al-Rashid was unlike any man she had known. Imposing yet gentle, his voice deep and deliberate, like someone who had learned to command attention without needing to raise his tone. At 41, he carried the scars of power: sharp jaw, hawk-like gaze, olive-toned skin kissed by desert winds, and a mysterious presence that made even the yacht's captain avoid direct eye contact. He rarely smiled, but when he did, it made Malia forget everything: her poverty, her doubts, her past. She had been sold to him. That much was true. But in a way that didn't feel cruel. At least, not at first. Zayed hadn't just paid for her release from a trafficker's hands. He'd flown her to Dubai, dressed her in elegance, and asked for her hand in marriage with a single sentence: "I can offer you protection and purpose." Now they were here, just the two of them, on what he called the Island of Gold. White sand, black volcanic cliffs, and a mansion built directly into the rock face. No internet, no phone signal, no staff. Just silence. And him. "You'll be safe here," Zayed had whispered in her ear when the yacht anchored. At first, she didn't question it. The villa was a fortress of wealth. Marble floors, gold trim, floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out onto the sea. In the main room, a portrait of a lion hung above the fireplace, strong, dominant, alone. Malia walked through the house barefoot, letting her fingers brush against every surface, trying to convince herself this was real. Zayed didn't speak much that first day. He led her to a room filled with dresses and jewelry, told her to wear what made her feel beautiful. At dinner, they ate in silence, except for the soft echo of waves crashing against the cliffs. She watched him drink something dark from a silver cup, his eyes focused on the horizon. "Do you ever laugh?" she asked gently. He looked at her then, his lips curling into a faint smirk. Laughter is for men who have nothing to lose. That night, she dreamed of him standing alone in a burning desert, holding something in his hand, something that glowed red and dangerous. She woke up before she could see what it was. The next morning, she found Zayed standing on the balcony in full tactical gear, black shirt, black pants, boots, and a gun strapped under his shoulder. "You're going somewhere?" she asked, trying to sound calm. "Just business," he replied, not turning around. She nodded slowly, but a feeling crept into her chest. Tight. Cold. Before he left, he handed her a small velvet box. "A gift," he said. Inside was a diamond necklace, its centerpiece shaped like a crescent moon. "It belonged to someone I trusted once," he said. "Now it's yours." He kissed her forehead and walked out the door without another word. Malia watched from the window as he boarded a black helicopter hidden behind the cliffs. No pilot, no security, just him. She waited an hour, then 2. She wandered the house, trying not to panic. But the silence began to shift from calming to suffocating. That's when she noticed it. The locked suitcase near the foot of his bed. Black, heavy, with reinforced edges. She sat in front of it for a long time. Was she imagining things? Or was the man who saved her hiding something far more dangerous than a broken heart? Her hand trembled as she reached for it, but just before her fingers touched the handle, a voice echoed through the hallway. "Malia!" She turned. No one was there. Only the necklace around her neck and the sudden weight of a secret she hadn't yet discovered. The next day brought a storm. The sky darkened early, and winds howled against the villa's thick glass walls. Malia wrapped herself in a blanket and stared at the waves crashing far below. Zayed had not returned. No message, no call. No one even knew where they were. Or rather, no one but him. The silence wasn't just lonely now. It was menacing. She wandered the halls like a ghost trapped in someone else's life. The opulence felt heavier than chains, too much marble, too much space, and too little warmth. Everything Zayed gave her sparkled, but none of it felt real, not compared to the pulse of anxiety growing in her chest. She returned to the bedroom and sat cross-legged in front of the suitcase. Again, it was locked with a 4-digit code. Heavy duty. Military grade, she guessed. Who travels with a case like this to their honeymoon? She tried 0,000, then 1 to 34, then 10:23, his birthday. Nothing. She stared at it for an hour, the wind outside groaning like something alive. Then, suddenly, she stood up and went to the bathroom. She remembered Zayed had trimmed his beard the night before he left, and the electric shaver was still plugged in. Next to it, his toothbrush, a small comb, and a vial of cologne. She picked it up and sniffed it. Sandalwood, leather, fire. Something about it chilled her. She turned the bottle over. There, etched into the glass in small gold numbers, 7291. Her pulse quickened. Back in the room, her fingers hesitated over the lock. If this code worked, what would that mean? That he was careless, or that he wanted her to find it? She entered the numbers. Click. The lock snapped open. Inside, under a folded Kevlar vest and some dark gloves, was a collection of documents, phones, and a sealed envelope with no name. But what caught her eye immediately was the top item. A passport. Zayed's face. Different name. Khalid M. Al-Darim. She picked up another one. Same photo. Yet another identity. And then a third. Malia's hands trembled. She rifled through the papers, receipts from border crossings, maps of rural areas in North Africa, a blueprint of a UN outpost. Her breath caught. She didn't understand everything, but one thing was clear. Her husband was not just a businessman. He was hiding something vast, dangerous, maybe even violent. There was a photo tucked between the files. It showed Zayed, no, Khalid, standing beside a group of men in camouflage. Desert, guns. A flag in the background she didn't recognize. He was smiling. A full, fearless smile. And that terrified her more than anything. She dropped the case and backed away as if it might explode. Suddenly, the lights flickered. And then, darkness. The villa lost power. She froze. The storm outside screamed against the walls like it was trying to get in. Wind slammed the shutters. Something in the kitchen clattered and fell. She whispered, "Zayed?" No answer. She reached for her phone. No signal. She lit a candle and crept through the halls. Every shadow felt alive. She passed a mirror and saw herself, necklace glinting like a warning. She had to do something. Leave. Escape. But how? The helicopter. Maybe it had keys inside. She ran barefoot through the stone hallway to the back cliffs where it had landed. The wind nearly knocked her down, but she kept going. The pad was empty. No chopper. It was gone, as if it had never been there. She stumbled back to the villa, soaked and shivering. She locked the doors. She slid to the floor and clutched her knees, rocking. Then she saw the candlelight flicker behind her. She turned and screamed. Standing in the doorway, dripping wet, clothes torn, eyes burning with something she couldn't name, was Zayed. Alive, back, and not alone. Behind him stood two men, one with a duffel bag, the other with a weapon slung over his shoulder. "Malia," Zayed said softly, like a father scolding a child. "You opened it, didn't you?" She couldn't speak. He walked toward her slowly. "The honeymoon," he whispered, "is over." Malia couldn't move. Her back pressed against the cold marble floor as Zayed's shadow loomed over her. The storm howled beyond the glass walls, but inside the villa, everything was silent, too silent. The two men behind him didn't say a word. One of them placed the duffel bag on the table with a dull thud. The other stood guard at the door, like this wasn't a home, but a base. Or worse, a prison. Zayed's eyes flicked to the suitcase she'd opened. It still lay half shut on the floor, revealing the corner of a false passport and the edge of the envelope. "I trusted you not to touch it," he said. She stared at him, soaked, shaking, heart galloping in her chest. "Who are you?" He didn't answer. Instead, he kneeled in front of her. His soaked clothes clung to his body, revealing a frame that had been hardened by more than gym sessions, by survival, by war. He looked into her eyes, and for a moment she thought she saw sorrow, but it passed like a cloud over the moon. "My name is not Zayed." She already knew. She had seen the names. Khalid, Al-Darim, another identity, perhaps more real than the man she married. "I was never meant to be your husband," he added quietly. "Not in the way you think." She clenched her jaw. "Then, what am I to you?" He didn't answer. Instead, he turned toward the men. "Out! Give us a moment." They obeyed without hesitation. Now alone with her, he reached for the envelope in the case and handed it to her. "Read it," he said. Her fingers hesitated, then tore it open. Inside were 3 photographs. The first showed her as a child, maybe 6 years old, standing outside her grandmother's hut in Senegal. The second, a teenage Malia working at a small market stand, eyes filled with exhaustion. And the third, her being dragged into a black SUV by 2 men. The day she was taken. She looked up at him, horror rising in her throat. "How did you get these?" "I've been watching you for a long time," he said. She dropped the photos. "What are you?" she whispered. He sat down across from her, finally shedding the mask. "I'm an agent, but not for any government you'd know. I work with a faction that doesn't officially exist. We eliminate threats, restructure alliances, Silence chaos before it reaches the world stage. Her voice cracked. And I'm chaos. He shook his head. No, you're the key to stopping it. She blinked, confused. Your trafficker, he continued, wasn't just some criminal. He was part of a private syndicate that launders intelligence through human trade. They use girls like you to smuggle secrets between borders, hidden in documents, jewelry, even bodies. You were part of a transfer, Malia, and you didn't even know it. Her stomach turned. You carried something once, he said. Years ago, a disc hidden in a shoe heel. You were too young to realize. She felt the ground shift under her. That disc nearly started a war. Malia shook her head, tears streaming down her face. So what now? You bought me to keep me quiet. No, he said, his voice heavy. I bought you to keep you alive. She didn't believe him. Not yet. Not fully. Then he reached into his shirt and pulled out a folded piece of paper. It was a wedding license. Stamped, signed, legal. Her signature. You were never supposed to know, he said, almost tender now. But I wanted to give you something real, even if it was born in lies. She stared at the paper. And the men? She asked. The weapons. The secrets. He stood. There are people coming. People who know you're with me. They won't care if you're my wife or not. They'll kill you to hurt me. Then why did you bring me here? She cried. Because this island, he said, walking to the window, isn't paradise. He turned back to her. It's the last place they'll look before they strike. Malia didn't sleep that night. She sat curled on the edge of the bed, knees hugged to her chest, staring into the darkness. The candlelight had long faded. The power hadn't returned. Zayed, or Khalid, or whoever he really was, had retreated to another room. And the villa, once a fantasy built of gold and dreams, now felt like a cage floating in the middle of nowhere. The storm had passed, but the silence it left behind was worse. She could hear the sea, hear her own breath, and somewhere in the house, the soft creak of leather boots on marble. She rose when the first light of dawn crept through the window. Her bare feet touched the cold floor, and for a moment she stood still, staring at her reflection in the tall mirror across the room. There she was. Not the poor village girl, not the bride in silk, but someone else. Someone who had been hunted, used, protected, lied to, and still stood. And behind her, reflected in the mirror, was the painting of the lion above the fireplace. Its eyes glared down at her, bold and golden. Watching. Waiting. She turned toward it. The eyes weren't just paint. They were real. Tiny lenses. It was a surveillance system. Cameras. Hidden inside the lion's pupils. Her skin crawled. Everything here had watched her. She moved quickly through the house, into the office. She searched drawers, pulled open cabinets. Then, under the rug in the center of the room, she found a panel, a hatch, perfectly cut into the floor. She lifted it. Stairs led downward. Basement. No. Bunker. She descended slowly, her heart thudding with every step. The walls were lined with steel. The air was colder, denser. A single light flickered from a control panel near the far wall. There were weapons, radios, shelves filled with files and maps, and on one wall a giant screen showing 6 different camera feeds from outside the villa, the beach, the forest trail, and even the bedroom. Malia stared at the screen, horrified. He had watched her every move. She slammed her hand against the table. "You planned this," she whispered. "You think I enjoy this life?" A voice said behind her. She spun around. Zayed stood at the base of the stairs, arms crossed, expression unreadable. He wore a black shirt again, sleeves rolled, eyes cold with calculation. "You made me fall in love with a man who doesn't even exist," she spat. He stepped forward. "I never asked you to love me." "Then why the wedding?" she snapped. "Why the necklace? Why all of this?" He sighed. For the first time, he looked tired, older. "I told myself I'd give you 1 week. 1 week where you wouldn't feel hunted. 1 week where you'd believe the world could be kind. You gave me a lie." He nodded. "Yes. But I swear to you, Malia, I never intended to hurt you. I needed to get you out of that world alive. They were going to sell you to someone else, someone who wouldn't stop at information." She narrowed her eyes. "So, you bought me?" "Yes," he said without shame. "And if I had to do it again, I would. I've buried cities for less than what they plan to do to you." A silence fell between them. Then he turned to the control panel and flipped a switch. One screen flickered, then zoomed in. A boat, small and black, cutting through the water toward the island. "Visitors?" she asked. "No. Enemies?" He looked at her. "Hunters." "How many?" "4 that we can see," he said. "But I suspect more. They've found us." She swallowed hard. "So what do we do?" He opened a steel drawer and pulled out a pistol, then another. He handed one to her. Her fingers shook. "I don't know how to use this." "You'll learn fast." She looked at him. "I'm not a soldier." "No," he said. "You're a survivor. That's more dangerous." And just like that, the honeymoon was over, for both of them. The island was no longer a sanctuary. It was a battlefield. And the woman he thought he could protect without involving had just become his only hope of survival. The sky turned a violent shade of gray as the boat reached the shore. Zayed and Malia crouched behind a broken stone wall near the cliff's edge, watching the figures disembark. 4 men, dressed in tactical gear, moved like wolves, silent, fast, and precise. One carried a long-range rifle. Another held a metal case. The third, tall and wide-shouldered, barked silent orders with hand gestures. The fourth walked differently, slower, more casual, as if he'd been here before. Zayed's jaw tensed. "That one," he said, pointing. "That's Omar, my brother." Malia froze. "Your brother?" Zayed nodded once. "By blood, not by loyalty." She stared at the man below. He did resemble Zayed. Same sharp nose, same cruel lips. But where Zayed moved with quiet intensity, Omar walked like he owned every soul in sight. "He was supposed to die in Syria," Zayed added coldly. "I made sure of it." Malia swallowed hard. "You tried to kill your own brother?" Zayed looked at her, voice low. "He burned an entire refugee compound to the ground, women, children, all because they gave food to the wrong side. He calls it strategy. I call it genocide." She understood now. This wasn't just a family feud. This was history, soaked in blood. Down by the beach, Omar raised a small device. A high-pitched signal shrieked from it, only briefly. Moments later, a second boat appeared on the horizon. "We're outnumbered," Zayed said. She looked at him. "Then we run." He shook his head. "There's nowhere to run to. They're not here to capture us. They're here to erase us." Malia gripped the pistol tighter. It felt heavier than before, like it had absorbed the weight of her choices. She wasn't trained. She wasn't ready. But she was angry. "I won't die here," she said. Zayed almost smiled. "Good." They moved quickly through the villa, sealing off entrances, turning over furniture, creating improvised defenses. Zayed activated the bunker's internal sensors and handed Malia a small earpiece. His calmness wasn't confidence. It was habit. Survival had long been his religion. As night fell, the wind rose again. The sea became a black void, echoing with the distant rumble of thunder. Then, silence, and the lights cut out. Again. "They've breached the generator," Zayed muttered. Malia's earpiece crackled. "Perimeter east breached. 3 inbound." She pressed her back against the kitchen wall. Her hands trembled. She thought of the market in Senegal, of the old woman who used to sell fried bananas and tell stories about spirits that walked in the dark. A footstep, a shadow, a breath. She lifted the gun, and as the first man entered, she fired. The recoil knocked her sideways, but the bullet hit. The intruder collapsed with a gasp, not dead, but wounded. Zayed appeared a second later, finishing the job with precision. "Nice shot," he said. She was shaking. "It was luck." "Don't underestimate luck. It saves lives." Another explosion rocked the villa. The roof groaned. Smoke filled the hallway. Zayed grabbed her wrist. The tunnels, now! They raced through the smoke-filled corridor, past the lion painting, past the broken chandelier that lay in shards. They reached a hidden door behind the wine cabinet. Zayed pushed it open, revealing a narrow stone tunnel leading into the cliffs. Malia turned to him. "Why didn't you run before?" He didn't answer, but as they descended into darkness, he finally spoke. "Because I was waiting to feel alive again." "And did you?" she asked. He glanced at her, eyes soft for once. "Yes," he said, "with you." They moved through the winding tunnel, reaching a ledge that overlooked the sea. Below, jagged rocks waited like the teeth of a sleeping beast. Zayed pointed to a platform just beyond. "Emergency boat. If we reach it—" Gunfire echoed above them. Omar's voice followed, cold, amused. "Brother, don't make me chase you." Zayed cursed under his breath. "He's close." Malia turned. "We fight here." "No," he said. "We end it here." She looked at him, heart pounding. And for the first time she realized this wasn't a honeymoon gone wrong. This was the final chapter of a war she never asked to be part of. But now she was in it, and the only way out was through the blood that bound them. Omar's boots echoed in the tunnel behind them. Zayed pushed Malia forward, his breath quickening, not from fear, but from inevitability. At the ledge, the wind whipped violently, nearly throwing them back. Below, the emergency boat bobbed against the waves, too far to jump, too loud to use unnoticed. Malia turned to him, her face streaked with soot and tears. "We can't make it," she whispered. Zayed's eyes didn't leave the shadows behind them. "You can." He reached into his belt and handed her a small transmitter. "Get to the water. Activate this. A team I trust is 5 miles offshore. They'll come." Malia grabbed his wrist. "I'm not leaving without you." He leaned in and kissed her forehead. "You were never meant to stay in my war." Footsteps. Omar appeared. Smirking, rifle raised. "Always the dramatic one, brother." Zayed turned, shielding Malia. "This ends with you." Omar stepped forward. "And with her." He fired. Zayed moved fast, faster than he should have been able to. The bullet grazed his shoulder. He tackled Omar. They crashed against the stone. A brutal struggle. Old hate. Deep wounds. Malia screamed as the two brothers fought on the edge of the cliff. Gunshots. Shouts. Then silence. She rushed forward. Only Zayed stood, barely. Omar was gone. Fallen. Zayed's knees buckled. She caught him. Blood seeped from his side. He looked at her with fading clarity. "I told you I'd give you something real," he whispered. She cried, "Stay with me." He smiled weakly. I'm already where I need to be. Then his eyes closed. Weeks later, Malia stood on the balcony of a quiet apartment in Tangier. In her hands, the velvet box. Inside, the necklace Zayed gave her. The crescent moon shimmered under the morning sun. She still wore it. A new name was on her passport, a bank account full, papers proving she owned a small school for girls in Dakar. Everything Zayed had promised her, he left behind. She turned on the TV. A news report. Unidentified terrorist cell dismantled off Moroccan coast. Sources suggest high-level infiltration. No names, no photos, just silence. Malia stepped out into the light. She had survived, loved, lost, and somehow she had won. Because even in the middle of war, even hidden under false names and falling kingdoms, someone had seen her and chosen to give her everything. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel and leave a like. Share it with someone who believes that even in a world full of secrets, love can still be the most powerful weapon of all.